Welcome to the deep dive. The speed at which AI, especially, generative AI like ChatGPT, is moving. It's pretty breathtaking.
It really is. And the potential for efficiency for new kinds of business, it's huge.
Absolutely huge. But with that speed comes a lot of questions, right?
Oh, yeah.
Especially for businesses trying to figure out the rules of the road.
Exactly. What do you need to watch out for? Misinformation, privacy issues, bias. Well, we won't dive deep into bias today, but it's on the list. And just unforeseen problems.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. Cut through the noise. We want to clarify the key things you need to know about AI regulation, both here in Japan and, globally.
And crucially, what steps companies should actually be thinking about, maybe even taking right now.
Okay, so the plan is, first, Japan's current situation. Then we'll look outwards, EU, US mainly.
And wrap up with the practical stuff, what businesses need to focus on and do.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Let's start with Japan. Until pretty recently, my understanding was, one big AI law was more about companies doing their best based on government guidelines.
That's basically right. It was very much a voluntary approach. Think back to the human-centered AI social principles from 2019, plus various ministry guidelines, lots of guidance, but voluntary.
Right. Then April 2024, we got the AI business guidelines, version 1.0. That felt like pulling things together.
It really was a big step in unifying things. It came from both the Ministry of Internal Affairs and Communications and MITI. They basically consolidated earlier advice on development, use, governance.
And it laid out those 10 key principles, didn't it?
Yeah.
Human-centric, safety, fairness, privacy, security, transparency, accountability, education, fair competition, and promoting innovation. Quite comprehensive.
Very comprehensive. But, and this is key, they don't have legal teeth right now. Still guidelines. Though they do call out the need to tackle AI-generated misinformation.
Okay, so guidelines, but strong ones. But then things started moving faster, didn't they? May 2024, just a month later, the government's AI Strategy Council basically said, okay, we're thinking about actual laws now.
That was the turning point, yeah. A significant shift. That led to the AI System Research Group to hash out the details.
And that led to this new bill, the Artificial Intelligence Promotion Bill.
Exactly. Submitted to the Diet in 2025. It's Japan's first proper piece of legislation focused squarely on AI.
So what's this AI promotion bill trying to do? Sounds like it's juggling a couple of things.
It is. Two main objectives, really. One, manage the risks. Misinformation, misuse for crime, data leaks, that kind of thing.
Okay, the safety aspect.
Right. But the other side is boosting AI itself, promoting R&D, getting it used more widely in society, basically making sure Japan stays competitive internationally.
So protection and promotion.
Yeah.
How does the bill actually plan to do that? What's in it?
Well, a big piece is setting up a central body, tentatively called the AI Strategy Headquarters, right in the cabinet, led by the PM.
Okay, central command.
Pretty much. They'll create the national AI plans, push for investment in research and talent, and sort of map out the whole regulatory journey for AI in Japan.
And I heard the government's giving itself some new powers, too, like investigation powers.
Yes, that's in there. The power to investigate AI misuse or accidents. They can tell businesses, you need to fix this.
And if they don't?
Well, potentially, they could publicly name the companies that aren't complying, which, can be quite a strong incentive sometimes.
Yeah, reputation matters. But I also heard, interestingly, no actual fines or penalties in this bill, at least for now.
That's correct. The initial focus is more on encouraging companies to improve voluntarily using administrative guidance. It's being called a risk-based collaborative approach.
So less stick, more carrot initially.
Kind of.
Yeah.
But it is a definite shift. It moves away from purely voluntary guidelines to a system where the government can step in, can demand information. It's becoming more rule-based, even without immediate fines.
Okay. And the timeline is get this passed in 2025, then roll out the national plans, maybe update those guidelines based on what this research group finds.
That's the plan. And the AI Safety Institute, AISI, within the IPA.
Ah, yes, the Tech Promotion Agency.
Right. They'll be key in gathering the technical know-how, especially for shaping safety rules in really sensitive areas. Think healthcare, self-driving cars, finance.
It feels like Japan's trying to walk a line, be a leader in AI tech, but also be a responsible player on the world stage.
Definitely. International collaboration is explicitly mentioned in the bill. Japan's active in G7 talks, OECD discussions, trying to help shape those global rules too.
So, bottom line for Japan right now. Regulations are evolving from voluntary guidelines towards actual law. but starting collaboratively. Still, the door seems open for stricter rules later, penalties, maybe licenses for high-risk stuff.
That's absolutely a possibility down the line, which is why acting now during this sort of grace period is so important for companies.
Right. Build those good practices proactively. Okay, that covers Japan's direction. Let's look overseas. The EU's AI Act, that's a big one. How does that compare?
Oh, it's a very different beast. Much more proactive, comprehensive, really the world's first major AI law. And the potential penalties alone tell you something.
What are we talking about?
Up to 7% of global annual turnover, or 35 million euros, whichever is higher. That really signals a shift. The responsibility is firmly on the companies deploying AI.
Wow. And it uses that risk classification system.
Yes, 4 tiers. Unacceptable risk, those are basically banned, then high, limited, and minimal risk. The rules you have to follow depend heavily on which category your AI falls into.
Can you give an example? Like, what does it actually require?
Sure. For instance, to fight deepfakes, any AI-generated image has to be clearly labeled as such. That's mandatory.
Okay, transparency.
Exactly. And for high-risk AI things impacting health, safety, fundamental rights, you need serious pre-market risk assessments and ongoing accountability. Much stricter.
And this act is approved, but not quite live yet.
Approved in 2023, yeah. Enforcement starts rolling out from 2026. And remember, this applies to anyone operating in the EU market, so Japanese firms need to be ready if they do business there.
Got it. Huge potential fines, risk-based, applies broadly. Okay, so that's the EU's very structured top-down approach. What about the US? Seems different again.
Very different, much less centralized. No single big federal AI law yet. It's more about industry guidelines and government policy directives.
Like the NIST framework, or Biden's executive order.
Precisely. The NIST AI Risk Management Framework came out in 2023, voluntary guidance on making AI trustworthy. And Biden's order in late 2023 told federal agencies basically start figuring out how to test these things, prevent bias, and so on.
So the vibe in the US is more guidance, let companies innovate, avoid heavy regulation.
That's generally the emphasis, yes. A concern about stifling innovation is definitely part of the conversation there. They prioritize guidelines and letting companies figure things out to a large extent.
And briefly, other places, China, UK.
China's gone for quite strict controls, especially on generative AI needing pre-approval, filtering content, mandatory labeling. The UK is leaning on existing regulators for different sectors and pushing international talks like their AI Safety Summit.
So it's a real mix globally, but the underlying theme seems to be pushing towards more transparency, more safety, more ethical thinking around AI governance everywhere.
That's the common thread, definitely. Responsible innovation is the goal, trying to balance progress with protection.
Okay, so pulling all this together, Japan moving towards rules, EU already there with strict ones, US more guideline focused.
Yeah.
What are the absolute key things businesses listening right now need to be focusing on? What's the action plan?
Okay, several critical points. First, just keeping up is vital. Understand these guidelines, especially the Japanese ones, and start thinking about how to embed those principles, transparency, accountability, fairness, safety, into your own processes.
So compliance, even with guidelines, and building that internal governance, maybe an AI ethics committee or something.
Exactly. Maybe even appointing a chief AI officer in some cases. Second, you absolutely need to know what AI you're using and what the risks are.
An inventory, basically?
Yes. Map out your AI use cases. Figure out which ones are high risk, maybe AI making decisions about people's rights or opportunities. Then prioritize mitigating those risks. Testing, human oversight, regular checks.
Makes sense. What else?
Transparency and accountability are huge. Can you explain why your AI made a certain decision? Are you telling users clearly when they're interacting with AI, like the EU's labeling rule?
And keeping records, like the data used.
Definitely. Log management, maybe model cards explaining the AI, and knowing who internally is responsible if something goes wrong. Fourth, data management.
Always critical.
Always. Complying with privacy laws like GDPR or Japan's APPI, getting proper consent, being super careful with the terms of service if you use external AI tools, and cybersecurity for the AI systems themselves.
Right. And then fairness, avoiding bias.
Yes. Actively check that your AI isn't discriminating. Monitor outputs, especially in sensitive areas like hiring or loans. Retrain models if needed, especially anything impacting people's lives.
Okay. Governance, risk assessment, transparency, data, fairness. Anything else?
Employee education. People need to understand the basics, the risks, and crucially, your company's rules for using AI.
Like, don't paste confidential info into a public chatbot.
Exactly that kind of thing. Develop internal guidelines, train people on them, and finally, just keep monitoring the rules nationally and internationally, especially the EU AI Act if you operate there, and be ready to cooperate with government inquiries under Japan's new bill.
Okay, that's a lot, but it breaks down into manageable areas. So if you're listening and thinking, where do I even start? What are the immediate next steps?
Good question. First, gather info. Keep tabs on government announcements, industry news. Second, do that AI inventory and initial risk check across the company.
Find out what's being used where.
Right. Third, start implementing some basic safeguards for anything high risk, even if they're temporary fixes for now. Double-checking by humans, clear user notifications, restricting certain data inputs, and check if your current policies align with those 10 government principles.
Review policies, maybe contracts too.
Definitely. Update internal rules, check contracts with vendors about AI liability and usage. Fifth, plan some training. Start with basic AI literacy for everyone.
And finally,
appoint someone or a team, maybe IT and legal, working together to own this. Make it a proper project to manage AI compliance and responsible use.
great practical steps. So the main takeaway seems to be Japan's AI regulation is shifting gears, moving from just guidelines to a legal framework, even if it starts gently. Proactive steps by businesses are really essential now.
Absolutely. Building that internal governance and focusing on responsible AI isn't just about compliance anymore. It's becoming table stakes.
Which leads to maybe a final thought for everyone listening. Beyond just ticking the compliance boxes, how could building trust around your use of AI actually create new value, maybe even a competitive edge for your business or your industry? Something to think about.
A very important question for the future.
That's all the time we have for this deep dive. Thanks so much for sharing your insights.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And for everyone listening, if you found this content valuable, please do subscribe to the channel and give us a thumbs up. We'll see you next time.